we were part of Three Idiots as well.
It made you popular.
It made us popular. In fact,
Are you in the film, by the way?
for small snippets, yes,
Yeah.
in the background. Interesting aspects of Three Idiots. That subsequently, people will tell us,
Yeah.
"Oh, you started a drone company. You must have copied the idea from Three Idiots movie." Since 2008, we have been focusing at creating the most cutting-edge technologies for enabling unmanned aerial vehicles, popularly known as drones, for enabling the problems that our security forces are trying to solve in the harshest, most remotest of countries.
I've had this theory about the elephant, the horse, and the deer. There is an elephant. I'm not mentioning the channel. Very big, huge resources, lots of OB vans, lots of staff, but it moves with the pace of an elephant and it's heavy. And the second I said is a horse, because there was another channel which got off to an early start, but it could only run straight. A horse in a forest can bump into a tree. It needs a racetrack. I said, you be the deer. Move fast, but your ability, your lightness, your ability to meander your way around, change course when necessary will make you win. Some entrepreneurs map horizons, some follow them, and some find the wings, or should I rather say, the rotors to reach them. Welcome to another episode of Mercedes-Benz brings you the new business of life. Dear viewers, the most important thing in entrepreneurship is whether you have a commitment that goes beyond your company, beyond your profits, beyond your EBITDA, beyond your investors, something greater. And what can be greater than building something that really matters to the nation? Today, I'm truly excited because my guest on the new business of life is Rahul Singh. He's the co-founder and head of engineering of a great company called Idea Forge. And the great idea behind Idea Forge is to make India self-sufficient in the new technologies that will matter in the future. Surveillance, defense, applications which will make our country great, applications where we will merge technology, artificial intelligence to build a great India. If we have to be a truly Atmanirbhar Bharat, as the Prime Minister says, we must be Atmanirbhar first and most importantly in the area of drones. So Rahul, you're playing around with the drone. Hi, welcome.
Great to meet you.
Great to meet you. Great to meet you, Rahul. I've been looking forward to this so much. And you brought your fancy drones to our campus. What's that drone flying there? Can you tell me about it? What's that drone?
So that drone is called Q6. It's a surveillance quadcopter or
Yeah.
quadrotor,
Okay.
popularly known. This is particularly meant for any kind of security surveillance applications.
Okay.
It's easy enough for people not to worry about continuously flying it. For example, right now,
Yeah.
I just left it and it's maintaining its own business.
Maintenance, yeah.
And you could have a very simple interface to say, I want to send it 10 kilometers away.
Okay.
And it'll figure out how to manage itself while it's 10 kilometers away, giving you live clarity of what is happening at that location. Very valuable for a lot of security and surveillance applications. And we have been at it for a long while now, making it such that it could operate in very contested environments. It could operate with jammers on, it could operate with spoofers on, exactly what the Indian armed forces and other security forces need for the modern conflict today.
Is it true? Just want to get this rumor out of the way at the start. Is it true, Rahul, that your concept drone was the one that featured in Three Idiots, the famous scene with the drone and the engineering college campus? Is it true that that was your drone? How long back was that?
That was very, very long back. That was one of the early prototypes that we were playing around with.
Yes.
And somehow we got noticed, we came in news, and the team from Three Idiots got in touch with us. We thought it was a fun thing
What
to
were you noticed for then?
We were noticed for creating a quadrotor project,
Yeah.
a very, very early version of this, out of India. No one imagined that this could be created in India.
Yeah.
And we made this, became newsworthy. Movie team came to us. We said we thought it'll be a fun project to get involved in. So we
So,
thought,
so Amir Khan flew your drone?
he held,
He pretended.
sort of, one of us were in the background helping him
Yeah.
control the drone.
Yeah. Amazing. What a story, isn't it? So, ladies and gentlemen, from Three Idiots, that scene, which I think, that tragicomic scene, which we will never forget, it's part of our lives, to today, when a drone of the kind that you're seeing right up there was seen to be something totally space age, to something which is becoming a part of our lives, becoming a part of warfare, becoming a part of surveillance, becoming a part of industry. How things have changed. Are we going to live in a droned world in the future?
I think so, and it'll become so omnipresent that
Yeah.
we not even notice them. They
Yeah.
have become boring and doing their jobs around us.
Yeah.
That will probably start to ignore them eventually.
Wow, I can't ignore that one. That's a beauty of a drone. It's so wonderful out there. What a beautiful drone. And what a great company you built. So I'm looking forward to this. What we'll do is very simple. I don't fly drones. With great difficulty, I drive cars. So we're going to go across, take a drive around on Mercedes-Benz, the new business of life, and learn. And learn. Most importantly, this is a learning series. Learn from Rahul how he has built a company from scratch and why he still wants to own that company and what he sees of the drone business 10 years, 20 years from now. So this is going to be a learning episode. Let's go straight and walk into that beautiful car that's waiting for us.
Great.
Okay, are you comfortable?
I am
you
super
correct?
comfortable.
Okay, since this is not a self-driven thing, we'll first put on our seat belts
Yes.
and then I'll take you for a little drive and we'll get to know each other better. Rahul, now remember one thing when you're with me, you are always on record. I keep telling this, don't say I didn't tell you later, earlier, so
With you, you are always on a Truman Show.
I'm always on the Truman Show. That's right. I think now we can go. Shall we?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, let's go. Thank you. So I'm always on a Truman Show, by the way, as you said,
Yeah.
because someone asked me.
Yeah.
In fact, they asked me this morning, what happens when the cameras are not around you? I keep saying I'm somebody else completely. When the cameras are not around me. But the advantage is, Rahul, when you do this, then you always are well behaved.
Yes.
So I'm truly very well behaved.
I'm assuming your subconscious knows that there may be a camera somewhere.
Yeah, it's always like this. But also, that's on a serious note. When you're a journalist and when you're in the business of media, I believe there must be no filter between what you are as a person and what you are on air. So for me, I don't know how it works for you. I believe transparency, authenticity, these are values that matter to me a lot. And they help me in my work, in my business, in my day-to-day life. I don't know how it works for you because you're in a sensitive industry, but does it work for you like that?
It does. And I completely agree with you that if you have to maintain two different lives, it's too complicated. You're not really doing justice to either as freely as you could.
Correct.
So if that's your full life, be it personal or professional, you are the same person.
Yes.
It's far more liberating.
Yeah.
And I thought the format of this show also seemed to be very transparent in terms of a flowing conversation.
It's a flowing conversation. In fact, it's much easier when there are no filter conversations and I get to learn more. And increasingly, in the course of doing these episodes for the new business of life, I'm learning a hell of a lot. Now about your business, I don't know where to start this conversation, but I'll probably take you back to just pre-college.
Sure.
Right? Rahul, just by way of introduction once again, Idea Forge is a fantastic company. It's a drone company.
Yes.
Which makes it very cool. Is it very cool to be the founder of a drone company? Let me actually start with that. Do people look at you differently? Are you uber cool? Are you very trendy? Because what can be more in than founding a successful drone startup? I think. Am I reading it right, or are you saying? Yeah.
Yes. So we love technology.
Yes.
And we decided to do drones because we thought it was super cool to do this, super exciting to do this.
Okay.
We think it's one of the coolest things to pick up as a work or challenge. But today, I am I'm not the most social media active person, so I'm not sure what my coolness rating is in true sense.
Wow.
But we definitely think the work that we do and the problems that we're trying to solve are the most interesting and the coolest things one can choose for.
Why is that?
So when I was at IIT, I was like, oh, I'm super passionate about technology. I really want to do something. In fact, we're looking for a job which meant giving us challenges to fuel our curiosity, create something meaningful.
Yes.
And when we didn't find any of great options around that, we said, why wait for a job to give us that challenge? Let's set it up ourselves
Okay.
and go ahead. And
When was this? Which batch IIT are you?
I-
Bombay?
Yes, IIT Bombay, Mechanical Engineering, BTech, 2002 to 2006.
Okay.
Graduated in 2006.
Okay.
But our founding team came together while being at IIT. We discovered each other and we
You
thought,
batchmates?
batchmates.
You're all mechanical engineering or electronics, I guess?
So the only thing common
Yeah.
is the passion and curiosity for playing with technology and creating something real.
Okay.
Two of us are from the same batch but two different departments. The third person is from the same department but a different batch.
Okay.
So it wasn't that we were sitting in one class that got us together.
Okay.
It was nothing academic which motivated us to come together.
What brought you together?
So the story goes that I wanted to build a small hovercraft because there were a lot of scrap bikes on the IIT campus, and we thought, what a waste of resources. Can we take the engine out of it and create something useful out of it, out of these bikes which are no longer useful? So a lot of students, when they would go out of IIT and the bikes would be at the end of the life, they just leave it there.
Leave it and go on.
Yeah, so there was a junkyard created at IIT Bombay over the years of students who had gone away and left their old bikes there.
Okay.
And they were just rotting there. I was like, this has value.
Okay.
What can I create out of it?
Yes.
So thought ki we can take the engine out and create something which is powered, and hence we tried to create an hovercraft. I needed some help.
Why a hovercraft?
It's just putting a few things together. There's Powai Lake next to our campus. There's the engine available. I could make something happen. Creating something on road wasn't something novel that I could try. There wasn't enough excitement there. So I thought, before flying, can I at least make something hover on the lake?
Naturally.
Just float over the water. And that's what we started doing. And I reached my co-founder, Ankit, who was a year senior to me, and he was heading a innovation promotion body in the at IIT. And he said, okay, great idea. Let's fund it and do something about it. Nothing academic about it, no project.
Nothing, yeah.
And we created something over a course of a week, tried experimenting with it, realized other technical challenges, and that's how we discovered our third co-founder, Ashish, who I feel is the most brilliant engineer that I have ever known.
What's his branch?
He's electrical engineering,
Okay.
but he started doing engineering as a middle school person, trying to create things on his own. He created a computer game at an age and at an era where computer games were not really known to be attempted by school kids. So he's a self-taught engineer. IIT added a lot of value to him, but he is great at electrical, software, mechanical, you name it, he can sort of logically approach it. So this is how we stumbled across each other. And what we realized that when the 3-4 of us came together, the fourth co-founder, Vipul Joshi, he joined us a bit later. He was a childhood buddy of my first co-founder, Ankit Mehta. And we realized then when the 3 or 4 of us come together, we complement each other in such a way that we create superhuman outcomes. So I have a concept that the only way to become superhuman is to collaborate in such interesting ways that you can do things beyond what a single human can do. And that's what we created together. And that's how the origins of IdeaForge came about. And the hovercraft was a seedling into the concept of flying. Soon enough, we ended up trying out creating a 4-rotor flying aircraft, what we popularly call quadrotors today. And we thought we had invented something new that no one has ever done before.
But was it done before?
Only later to realize that these concepts have been around from the earliest thinkers.
So the quadrotor had been done globally by others?
Yes. A few companies in the US and Europe.
Which year would that be?
This was around 2003.
And you were doing this, say, 3 years later? 2-3 years later?
So 2003, 2004 is when we were doing it.
You didn't know of the ones that were done in America? Don't tell. Ah, no, no. Really?
Yes.
So you were like doing it with the spirit of like invention.
Yes.
Then what happened after that?
So,
You realized that someone else had done it elsewhere, but you told yourself, never mind,
never mind.
we've done something good and there are 4 of us. What did you do with the idea?
So we continued.
You were in 4th year by now?
We were around, at that time we were in 3rd year. We started playing around with it. We, in fact, created.
This is a pure 3 idiot story going on here, by the way. Huh? You see the parallels?
Yes, yes. And we thought, and hence we.
Was the
related
movie released in your time or after?
after.
Okay.
So we started these experiments and started doing some things, only to realize that there was no availability of the components to put in together. So you had to create every component from scratch.
Okay.
The kind of motors we needed were not there, so we had to modify the existing type of motors. The type of propellers we needed were not there, so we had to modify everything. What that created is lots and lots of rooms for making mistakes.
No, you launched a company by now.
No,
So what were you doing it for fun?
we're just doing it for fun.
How expensive was this?
It was expensive, but we are figuring out all ways for the institute to fund our
Oh, okay.
exploration.
Was IIT Bombay funding you?
IIT Bombay was funding it through different academic projects,
Okay.
but we are still students.
Of course.
2006 we graduated. We were still playing around with it. We thought we should start a company. We that time didn't figure out if this is the only thing we want to do. So we called our company Idea Forge, giving shape to ideas and creating reality out of it. And up till 2008, we didn't realize how good we were till the time we took one of these prototypes along with IIT Bombay to an international defense competition. It was organized at Agra Air Force Base, Indian MOD and US DOD had brought about all the top universities to compete to solve a problem of having a drone intervene in a counter-terrorist situation, go close to a building where a mock terrorist scenario was there and try to see what is happening and be able to help the security forces in
Surveillance.
surveillance. In 2008, we went in there with no expectation.
Were there Americans in this competition or only Indian companies?
All American universities
All American universities.
and all Indian universities.
Okay.
We went in there without any expectation. We came out being joint first with MIT US.
Wow. Joint first.
Yes.
This is beautiful.
And suddenly we got recognition.
So this moment of serendipity came then. What did you feel then?
So we realized,
Standing on the podium with MIT.
we realized that what we had here was something which was actually far more meaningful and far more comparative than what we had imagined. We had really just had fun with it, and now it was something.
What was it about your project that made it stand out from all the others? Because, you know, this is such a learning episode. And for everyone watching today, I just want to say this looking at this camera, that the important thing is learning. You know, people think today that everyone wants to do startup, everyone wants to make money, everyone wants to have exit, everyone wants to have valuation, everyone wants to become rich. But that is not the true business person, the authentic business person's approach. What you need is domain expertise, skill, craft, application, sacrifice, and hard work. All of this was being done by the founders of Idea Forge, including Rahul, and that led to this unexpected outcome. I think what you're telling me is a beautiful story, because you were working not for that outcome of standing first. The standing first happened almost as a corollary to the authenticity of your effort, because if you're authentic in your hard work, your work will stand out. But if you want to start a company thinking day one I'm going to be making billions, then your product will not stand out. There'll be no authenticity of your product. Am I reading this right?
You're reading it perfectly.
So I just want to always give, because I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes.
In this series, I want to give lessons to entrepreneurs from the lives of fellow entrepreneurs like you. And I think this moment, how old were you then? Like 20 or 21, something like that? Maybe you're-
Yes, around 21.
As a 21, 22-year-old,
Yes.
first with MIT in a drone competition with military military applications, right?
Yes.
So tell me where your life went from there.
Creating an impact is a huge driver for us. And in that case, getting that outcome of the problem statement given to us was a motivation. And later on in life as well, there were targets where we were competing with the global best of aerospace and defense companies. And the target there was not competing with all of those companies. The target was getting the job given to us concluded responsibly. At the end of concluding that job, we were pleasantly surprised to realize that we were the only ones left standing, and the other names which have experienced more than my life experience at making those technologies made some mistakes along the way.
But they must have had more capital. They must have had sort of a even more sort of supportive ecosystem around them, right? I mean, I presume your competitors from MIT or other top American universities would have had access to maybe more resources than you.
Definitely.
How does that impact the outcome?
And that's a question we always ask, that when we're doing anything, what is it that will give us an edge? We can't expect to have the biggest resource behind us. There'll always be someone having 100x more money than we. We can't expect to always have the biggest number of people behind us. What differentiates us is the quality of effort that we put in there. Quality wins over quantity in most cases, if not 100%.
Yeah.
And that's what we focused on. That there, just a very deep qualitative effort is what gave us the differentiation. And today, I believe in modern life, it is the skill of cutting the clutter. The world is full of noise, and the technology domain is also full of noise. How do you cut the clutter and get to the deepest part of the technology to unlock what you need for yourself? And that's something which we have focused on to give us an edge over most of the other efforts.
And then that technology can change also in a spur of a moment. So you are always doing it conscious that the decision you've taken on the technology today may not last as long as you may expect it to, because there's some other person also innovative around you.
Definitely.
There's another bunch of superhumans who are working equally to get to that outcome in a more efficient manner.
Definitely.
Right? So does that make you... So then you have to keep improving yourself, right?
Yes.
How does that happen?
So I strongly believe that technology is the most humbling thing in the ecosystem. Technology is very democratic. You can't rest on the laurels of making a technology and think that is the end of it. And hence, we approach it with a lot of humility.
Humility.
A lot of humility to say whatever we have done is still not the end of the road.
Okay.
The journey is ongoing. In fact, the biggest motivation for us is it's not the destination, but enjoying the journey itself which matters. Because
Is that easier said than done?
we are living it.
Now you're living it, but then you would be among a 0.001% set of successful people. Is that fraction too pessimistic, you think?
How do you define success?
Success isn't like, okay, you started a company, it worked for you.
Yes.
You may not have been successful. The four of you may not be in one company. You may have had to do jobs. You may have had to give up on your dreams. I mean, I'm just saying that, is that a risk that you knew you were taking at that time?
Yes. I saw your conversation with Aman a week back or so.
Yes.
And he spoke about how his start was a set of failures before he actually had what is recognized as the current success.
Correct. He did that.
And it's enjoying the process of trying, which is the most important part.
Yeah.
You have no guarantee of the traditional success or failure. It's the process of trying something out and creating something which you have to start enjoying.
Yeah.
And if you are genuine about it and persevere around it, the success is almost inevitable. It is guaranteed for
Is
you.
Is it?
I think so. That's the belief that is required for the entrepreneur to make it happen. Because there'll be 99 number of reasons why things can't work out.
This sounds like manifesting things. You have to always say that you will be successful. You have to say that it will happen. But what did you want to happen? After that, tell me again and go back to that episode.
Yes.
You won the competition. You were 21 years old, I guess. The rest of you around that same age. Then what happened? What did you think now?
So we started our company in 2007. So we are
Right after IIT.
Right after IIT, doing nothing else but trying to make the passion and technology that we're doing into something meaningful.
Okay.
2008, while we were still doing prototype development, a very, very significant event happened. The 26/11 attacks happened.
Oh, okay.
Right. And suddenly everyone was taken aback by what kind of a security compromise can happen in a safe environment like Mumbai. And we were left thinking that, oh, if we could have done this product a bit earlier and these could have been in the hands of the forces there, it would have
Which
made
product were you thinking about then?
a quad rotor as a surveillance tool.
You thought about that during 26/11?
We had thought about it earlier, but we had not finished it to give it to the end user. We were just playing around with it. As I had mentioned, 2008, this international competition had also happened, which we won, but it was still a prototype.
Development phase.
Yes.
Okay.
And that cemented our decision that what happened at that competition, that we were on one of the global bests, and what happened with the user in terms of the critical situation that happened, we really need to get this capability in line to deliver the outcome for our security forces. And that's the purpose that we signed up for. And since 2008, we have been focusing at creating the most cutting edge technologies for enabling unmanned aerial vehicles, popularly known as drones, for enabling the problems that our security forces are trying to solve in the harshest, most remotest of countries.
I remember 26/11, it had a defining impact on my life. I remember I was at Times Now, and when the news happened, we broke it first. And because we didn't have many reporters, we went on live on that story for 2 to 3 to 4 days. And, at the end of it, when Sandeep Unikrishnan's body was being cremated on the 4th day, when we spoke to his father, my entire newsroom was weeping. And I think on all of us, till then, I was also working for, personal success, professional success and glory and ratings and popularity. But that moment changed my life, because after that moment, I always began to find everything less important than national interest. I began to think of everything as something we can give up on or sacrifice on, but not on national interest. It sort of gave me a defining principle in my journalism, which I was lacking till that point of time. The defining principle after that was no longer the news story, but national interest. And it's very interesting for me that, it had that impact on you too. I was early in my career, you were just out of college, but it had an impact on you too. And you also began to think that what if I could have done something? Since then, I also say, what if I can do something? What if I can raise the level of awareness? What if I can even pressurize the government? I started to think about the importance of putting pressure on the then government to change its policy on terrorism in Pakistan. I'm sure in your way, you must have visualized that if I had a drone, small and effective enough, it could provide surveillance to the NSG
Yes.
at Trident.
Yes.
Or at where a human being could not go, at Trident or at maybe Taj or Chawad House. Do you think it was possible to do that? I'm asking you today.
It was
Do you think a drone could have been used by the forces then?
Yes.
In that combat situation? Do we think we could have saved lives? We could have done something more or been even more effective?
Definitely. And you'd see that time there were naval helicopters trying to fly around the Taj, trying to get a sense of where the terrorists are.
Yes.
And if a drone was there, you didn't need 1 or 2 helicopters. 2-3 drones could have done that job and be there 24/7 giving you intelligence. So we, as you are in the business of information, we are in a different kind of a business of acquiring information for the right decision making. And the forces would have been far more equipped to do this. And what we did eventually is supply such products to agencies like NSG.
You're doing that now.
We're doing that. We have done that for the last few years. Now, obviously, not just NSG, but all sorts of security and surveillance agencies across the country use it in the harshest, remotest, the most dangerous of environments to help make their jobs better and make it more effective.
So it's just that moment that came to you. So in 2008, 26/11 deepened your resolve to go deeper into drones?
Yes.
Did it?
Yes.
What happened after that?
So we formally, deeply started productizing it.
Productizing. What does productizing mean?
And I really want to talk about it as well.
Yes.
That the realization that what is the difference between a prototype and product was not very easily appreciated by us before we experienced it firsthand. This 2008 thing flew, did something, and then we spoke about earlier that we were part of Three Idiots as well,
Yeah.
which was the next.
It made you popular.
It made us popular. In fact, popular.
Did you become a celebrity on your campus? Or you were out of campus?
We were
by
out
then?
of campus.
But did it make you a celebrity? Are you in the film, by the way?
For small snippets, yes,
Yeah.
in the background.
You are?
But interesting aspects of Three Idiots that subsequently people will tell us that, oh, you started a drone company, you must have copied the idea from Three Idiots movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Which was great conversation. We don't have to defend.
Yeah, you
explain
can can just simply say, you say Rajkumar Hirani invented the drone and Idea Forge copied it from him. Gee, okay,
Yes,
great,
yes.
amazing. Okay,
So
but what is productization?
Yes.
This is an important lesson for an entrepreneur. Productization. But another moment, just to pause back, a moment of epiphany, realization happens when a company goes through a moment when you are already doing something, but then you sort of crystal gaze into the future. And 2611 was that event which made you believe, which made me believe that our work, our everyday effort can have a larger contribution to the country. So this is so important in the new business of life. Contribute to the country. If you're an entrepreneur, don't contribute to your balance sheet alone. Life is about contributing to the country, contributing to the future of our nation, right? So now tell me productization.
Yeah. So all of our business education
Yes.
happened while making mistakes in the field. We
Nope.
didn't do any MBA. We didn't do any
You didn't do any.
nothing.
Business course, yeah.
No business course. What we realized was two things. One, when you create a product, either you can create a product for something which is already existing and try to do it better. Now you could create a better phone today, a better search engine, a better soap, a better cake, whatever.
Correct.
Or you can try to create a product which does not exist before that in that market.
Okay.
We didn't have the appreciation of how much more difficult is it to get acceptability for the latter than the former. Creating a product in a class which exists, you don't have to educate the user. The user is already educated. You're just giving him a better service, a better outcome for what he wants. But when the user is not aware about what can I do with something, we realized it was much harder than what we expected to educate the user. The early few years just went into going to all the corners of the country, giving demonstrations, educating the customer that this is possible in the country. The first reactions we'll get, oh, this looks good, but which country did you import it from?
Oh,
And
really? Despite Three Idiots?
despite Three
This
Idiots,
okay. So who were the companies you were trying to reach out to then? Okay.
security forces,
Okay.
police agencies,
Okay.
and variety of security service agencies. It could be in Naxal area, it could be in all sorts of state police areas. What we then encountered was one of the security agencies, which was one of the earliest adopters of technology. The name of that agency is Uttar Pradesh Special Task Force.
Okay.
They're also in the movie Seher. And they came up with a requirement looking at what we had made that they would want to buy a drone. For that, one American company and us competed head on. And we finally won against that American company. We thought, another success.
Oh.
This proves that we are great.
Which year was this?
This is around 2010-11.
Was it like your first biggest contract, medium size?
First biggest contract
Yeah.
was worth 2 units.
This was the one?
Yeah, this was one. This is the first order ever. 2 pieces. We were riding.
How much would one piece cost
Uh,
at that time?
it would vary. Probably on an average, let's say 10 lakhs.
Okay.
And we were running high on having beaten an American company.
That was more important.
We thought we were great. We were running high on already having won a competition in 2008. We thought we were great. We delivered the product. The first day it got delivered, it started malfunctioning.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
So for the next few weeks, all we did was sit at the user's end.
Where was this?
This was Lucknow.
Okay.
We were based in Mumbai. All of us traveled to Lucknow, just sat there and spent the next few weeks solving the problem and realizing what is the difference between a prototype and a product. The difference between a product, a reliable product, and a prototype is a product has to work in the hands of the end user, not the creator. A creator using its own product is just a prototype. But the end user with his limited skill has to figure out how to use it and get some valuable outcome out of it.
Correct.
And that remained our focus. And
Did you lose any confidence because of the initial problem you had with your first big delivery?
I think the good part is we are built very resilient, and I think for most entrepreneurs, resilience is a very, very important thing.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, you'll have challenges.
Yes.
More often than not, you'll make wrong decisions.
Yeah.
But how do you learn from it and have the energy to come back and make the right decision is fundamental. If we can't have that resilience, most likely we won't survive.
But resilience is also financial, isn't it? Did you have the financial backup to do that?
So for the financial resilience, what is required?
Had you
is
taken on board any investors by now?
very small, early stage seed investors,
Just as much as you need.
just as much as we need.
Were you
And that
shedding equity?
we were shedding.
How much equity were you shedding?
So early on, we had shed single-digit equity, but a lot later, around 2015, 2016, we were open to get into a Series A investment. So that is something which happened much later.
Okay.
But early on, we were open to shedding equity for some amount of resources to come in. But more importantly, we used only as much as we really required. We were financially very prudent.
Okay.
We
You didn't
realized
get greedy at any time.
we realize that this is not a game which we can just crash and burn. We can't just expect to get a ton load of resources and just endlessly spend it without generating business.
Okay.
Especially because we were operating in a business working with defense, government, and hardware. All three words that the investment community at that point of time were not familiar, comfortable, or very gung-ho about. So we had to figure out how the resources will flow, and the best way for the resources to flow is if the business generates it. So we have been organically funded, generating business as we grew for the longest time.
So 1 minute, can I just ask you a question again, stepping back, because people who are building businesses must learn from these stories. You spoke about prudence, but entrepreneurs are often associated with flashiness, flashy lifestyles, and entrepreneurship is seen to be a very quick phenomenon. It's not seen to be something in which you have to struggle over a period of time. At least that's not the public perception of it. When you said that you were all prudent, I'm sure that's a quality that was shared by all of you, right? And not just one of you. Am I correct?
Yes.
Am I correct? So can you tell me more about it, please? I mean, how do you maintain prudence in terms of your costs, your lifestyle, your expenses, your office? I guess everything was also prudent at that level, because cash burn is a very big issue.
Yeah.
And people who want to burn cash don't last. So can you tell me more about that? How did that happen?
So I think financial prudence was at the core part of the early phase, and it still remains, but it was survivability which was at stake if the prudence was not there.
Okay.
And hence, while all of us were very aware and open to the concept, our co-founder and the CEO, Ankit Mehta, he is a champion of sort of being financially prudent.
Okay.
And collectively, he always ensured that all the decisions always factored in those prudences. So, for example, do we need a fancy office to start with? We would have definitely liked and be excited about a fancy office to start with. But we asked ourselves, logically, is it really necessary right now? And we took the right decisions. Now we have a fancy office because this is what the ecosystem requires right now. We want our team members to have nothing secondary of an international experience while working with us.
Yes.
But when we started, that was not a prerequisite for us.
Yes.
So all the office space, we lived together so that our personal expenses are minimal. We didn't necessarily focus on saving, but creating value through saving resources for the organization that we were building. Because our saving was in the value that we were creating for the long term there.
This is even after your Series A investment was done?
So this is continues till even today. Yeah.
Don't tell me you're all living together today. Besides that, are you saying the other principles, core principles are still intact?
Yes, they are. Probably not apparent as extreme as we used to be, but today it reflects in our product lineup. We only invest behind technologies and products which we know are going to see the light of the day and are going to create an impact. No just fanciness for the sake of it, just for the sake of flashing to the world that, oh, this can be created. If it really can meet the outcome and be valuable to the end user, we spend tremendous amount of resources behind it. But if it doesn't make sense, we should not spend the resources there and focus on where the
So this is important. Again, it's another lesson. I said at the start, this is going to be a learning episode. See, viewers, I'll take a 30-second summary of what I've heard so far from him. Important to prepare for failure while hoping for success. Prudence means you keep your cash flow less, extend it over a period of time to be able to withstand numerous failures without even falling prey to investors. Because remember, there are good ideas and there are people out there with capital who will want to gobble up companies with good ideas and tell them, listen, you've got to fail a lot more. I'm going to fund your failure. But what an entrepreneur will lose in the process is control. So you'll be left with 1% equity and they'll tell you that 1% equity is priced very high, but they are not going to take guarantee that you will control the destiny of your company. It is important for founders to control the destinies of their companies. And therefore, they need to prepare for failure rather than prepare for success. Hope for success, work for success. Do you agree?
Yes.
Strive for success, sacrifice for success, and always tell yourself, I'll be successful. But tell yourself, I'll be successful even if I fail 1,000 times over.
Exactly.
I think this is do you agree with this fundamental principle?
Completely.
Whether in media or drones, same principle applies.
Or whether you want to go climb Mount Everest.
Anything in life, right?
Yes.
Anything in life, yeah.
Exactly.
So please continue then. You told me about then, you've taken me up to 2015 and then what?
Over the next 5 years or so, the single-digit drone opportunities started becoming double-digit drone opportunities, started becoming triple-digit drone opportunities. So the market was growing. And we have seen the full evolution of drones being not known to drones being a household name today based on the wider media coverage. And we've seen the whole trajectory happening. So around 2015 and later, 2015, there was a large army opportunity which required some drones to be delivered. And in this particular army opportunity, all global players were allowed to participate. When the time to test these drones came, post 2015, around 2017 or so, when the actual test started, and this was a long process, we were the smallest, most unknown company in that competition. The couple of the largest Israeli companies were there. Some of the very experienced European companies were there. Some of the largest Indian defense companies were there. And we were an unknown player. Day one, everyone got lined up and the users were familiar with everyone else and they were like, who are you guys? Okay, we are a homegrown technology company who are trying to do a great service to the problems that you have. And that evaluation continued thoroughly for 2 years.
2 years.
From the coldest
2017 to 2019.
2016 to 2019.
The army was testing you all.
I don't know who was testing us.
But there's no guarantee the army will buy from you.
No guarantee.
Zero guarantee.
Zero guarantee. It's called NCNC. No cost, no commitment.
My God. How do you survive such a... What if you fail after 2 years of hard work? What if you're not chosen? You ever think about that?
You do, but you focus more on how to succeed and how to create value out of it. So we focused on the success part. And for the success, not to get deterred by these heavy duty competition against us. It was David versus Goliath kind of a situation. We just focused on what we had to do. I personally spent a couple of months at the highest, coldest places that the army is deployed at for getting the equipment tested there. Then a few months at the warmest and the harshest, hottest areas. And at the end of it, we realized that we were the only ones left standing. Everyone stumbled here and there,
The big companies.
the big companies.
This is excellent. Two lessons from here.
Yeah.
One, it just speaks volumes about the Indian Army's process, that it goes by ability, and that it's very transparent process in which it's not about how big a company you are, but how great your product is. So it speaks very well for the Indian Army's. This is an advertisement for the Indian Army's acquisition process.
I'll watch for
Truly,
it. Our
it is.
existence is based on the approach that the Indian Armed Forces have taken.
Yes, and it's incredible that you stand up to even the global companies, and also at this stage that we are in defense acquisition and development of our strategic abilities. It shows the ability that if a bunch of passionate people is given an opportunity, they can scale up. I've had this theory about the elephant, the deer, and the elephant, the horse, and the deer. So when I started Times Now, I said there is an elephant. I'm not mentioning the channel. Very big, huge resources, lots of OB vans, lots of staff, but it moves with the pace of an elephant and it's heavy. And the second I said is a horse, because there was another channel which got off to an early start, but it could only run straight. You see, a horse could not pirouette around. So a horse in a forest can bump into a tree. It needs a racetrack. I said, you be the deer. Move fast, but your ability, your lightness, your ability to pirouette around, as I say, meander your way around, change course when necessary will make you win. So I always think, have the philosophy of a deer rather than the muscle weight of an elephant or the early start of a horse.
Yeah.
So I use this philosophy in entrepreneurship, and I think that applies beautifully to you. So you became, in 2019, you became a very successful company with this big contract, I guess you got.
Yes. Yes. And
Right? By now you were supplying drones to the forces.
yeah. And before we move on, I just want to sort of catch on to the this concept that you beautifully outlined. And as you grow and become larger, you have to watch out for not becoming an elephant yourself. And that's something that we have to really think about.
Well said.
Yeah. So 2016 to 2019 was a phase when this happened, and we are a dual-use technology company. We just don't make military technology or government applications, but also enterprise. But the use of drones on the enterprise side remained very restricted because of a very cautious regulatory approach that the Indian regulators took at that point of time.
Okay.
Drone use, drone purchase for anything apart from the government use cases was completely restricted.
Okay.
And hence that side saw stagnation, deceleration, nothing much could happen. But around 2019, 2020, and that quickly being followed by COVID and the Galwan incident that happened,
Yes.
completely transformed the approach that the Indian government took in seeing this as an opportunity to be a global leader in this technology,
Yes.
rather than lag behind being overcautious around this.
Correct.
So the regulatory change happened that time.
Yes.
From being very restricted, it became very accommodating and permissive.
Okay.
That allowed a lot of the ecosystem to start flourishing. And you've seen the drone ecosystem mushrooming and flourishing across the country. And that's thanks to the change of the regulatory regime that happened at that point of time. But the second thing that happened around 2019, 2020 is the education became sustained by that event. We were trying to educate the user, why should you use it? Now it was very apparent. Galwan, if there were drones always patrolling that area, you would not have been surprised by finding that your neighbors were sitting in your area and you have to go head to head to be able to resolve the conflict.
Yes.
You could have preempt the problem rather than react to the problem. And that's something which became very apparent to everyone, and drone adoption since then has accelerated significantly.
For the forces, even outside the forces.
Even outside the forces, the regulatory aspects on the non-government applications has enabled wider adoption, and on the forces side, just the realization that this is required has accelerated.
Now there's talk of drones post-Operation Sindoor. Everyone's talking about it. People are talking about it in surveillance and news everywhere. Do you think you also, now every company wants to do drones, everybody wants to get into drones, and tell me one thing, every big corporate would like to have a drone company because it's an emerging area. It is common sense that it's going to be a big aspect of our growing industries, industrial and manufacturing requirements in the future. How are you preparing for it? You've done so well so far. So how will a company like IdeaForge, or how will you now prepare for the next phase to make sure you're not only the horse who had the early start?
The future of IdeaForge and the future of the Indian drone industry and the future of India itself is very rooted to the people who will be part of that future. And hence we pay a huge amount of emphasis on building the people, the team who are associated with IdeaForge. In fact, part of it is also my personal motivation. That my personal motivation is that IdeaForge or the work that we're doing should outlive us. Because I'm in a strong believer of immortality, but immortality through the work that you do, that it outlives you. And that outliving can only happen if the people can carry that torch further ahead. And that's what we are focusing on.
Can India be number one in drones in the world?
Definitely it can.
Can you be a leader in that? Can you play a role in that?
That's the target. That's the objective. That's what we are building up for. That's what we are trying to rally the talent in the country and Indian talent across the world. All of that talent can rally together to create transformational things. Indian tech leaders are at the helm of the biggest companies on earth.
Yeah.
And
why can't Rahul Singh do what Elon Musk is doing? Now let me explain this.
Yes.
Your application can be anywhere, right? Your technology can be applied in any form of mobility. Am I right?
It is.
Aerial mobility, drones, unmanned vehicles, you yourself mentioned.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So would you go beyond drones to grow?
We believe today in the future of electric aerial autonomy.
Electric aerial autonomy.
Yes.
Not terrestrial.
So the world is doing transformation on the ground.
Yeah.
There are enough people doing great job there.
Yeah.
It's not a shortage of effort there.
Yeah.
But we think the whole aerial economy is still untapped. It's not been democratized yet.
No.
It is limited to a very few set of things that happen.
Yeah.
And tomorrow is an inevitability of the aerial economy being expanded.
Yeah.
The electric and smartness, the autonomous part of it, is the enabler to unlock it.
Yeah.
Because then you don't need necessarily pilots to fly.
Yeah.
Things can fly and transport things together.
Yeah.
And when you fly, you just don't have to limit yourself to surveillance. You can move things around.
Yeah.
We are currently building a massive logistics platform which can carry more than 100 to 200 kgs up to 100 or 200 kilometers. And this, it will be able to do at altitudes as high as possibly Siachen Base Camp and things like that.
Wow.
Being able to resupply material for our armed forces in the harshest conditions. And when you do that, the imagination is eventually this will mature enough for all of your logistics around the urban areas to be supported by platforms like this.
Wow.
So we think the future is going to really be accelerated or enabled by platforms of this nature. And the reason we are so deeply involved while still being listed is post-listing that we did a few years back, we believe that we have still only scratched the surface of what's possible. What we have done so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is still there. And we really have to be the catalysts to discover the size of that iceberg as we go along. So that passion, that commitment, that perseverance is there. And over the next 5, 10, 15 years, you'd see this domain transforming in very, very exciting and surprising ways.
Yep, absolutely. Do you see yourself as a global player?
We do. In fact, in line to that, we have already set up a subsidiary in the US to be eventually, hopefully, be a net exporter rather than a net importer of technology out of the country. And that's what we are trying to do with our initiatives in US and the rest of the world. And we think we are good enough or competitive enough to take things global and compete in the home territory of the most technology evolved, most competitive economies in the world.
Well, I think you're going to get there. And I want to say something to you at the end. So shall we just get off and do the last sequence here? Because having heard you speak your heart out, there's something I'd like to share with you. First of all, it's been beautiful driving around with you and talking to you. And Rahul, I personally think you're at the start of your journey. You may think you've done a lot, but I think your next 20 years will determine how you think. I would like to see IdeaForge as a global company, a global leader in drones, and I really think that you've set your vision out very right. You are a person with humility, with your feet on the ground, and you're focusing on your product. And I think while you said that 2010 and then 2017 and then 2019 was the inflection point, can I make a prophecy about you? And I want to say this to all our viewers today. I prophesize that Rahul and IdeaForge will, in the next 3 to 5 years, and I consider this 3 to 5 year period, I think in the next 3 to 5 years, Rahul and IdeaForge will break absolutely new ground in the area they have set for themselves, which is unmanned aerial mobility. But I also predict that the itch will extend to terrestrial. And I truly believe I see this happen. But what is making me proud is that you're contributing to the security of our country. And that's incredible. Rahul, it's been a wonderful learning experience. I think this walking around and driving around, you may not have understood how much information you've shared with us. But this is a learning episode which should go to all management schools. I thank you very much. I wish you all the very best on behalf of Republic for IdeaForge. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Arnab. And I think I learned a lot more. I think you're perfect to go to a B school and give them a practical, concise, to the point education, which will be very relevant for
Life has been my biggest learner, and I'm still learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you. Thank you. See you on the next episode of Mercedes-Benz Brings You the New Business of Life. I hope you enjoyed this.